They called Billionaire's disabled son Robot Boy, until a black girl stood up. Robot Boy. The words echoed across the playground, sharp and merciless, stabbing deeper than any wound. 10-year-old Eli Morgan lowered his head, his prosthetic leg heavy like an iron chain, while cruel laughter wrapped around him. Imagine being the son of a billionaire, yet feeling smaller than everyone else, trapped between a father too distant and a stepmother who called him a burden. His eyes brimmed with tears he refused to let fall, because even pain had become a secret he carried alone. What would you have done in his place? Welcome to Emotional Echoes, a channel where emotions come alive and every story leaves a lasting echo in your heart. Please subscribe to Emotional Echoes channel. Help us reach 1,000 subscribers so more souls can feel these stories. Now, let me tell you his story. Stay with my video till the very end and let me know where you're watching from so I can see how far this story spreads. Eli Morgan was only 10, the son of one of the richest men in Atlanta, yet on the private school playground he felt like the smallest boy alive. His thin frame slumped on the wooden bench, his artificial legs stiff and heavy, while laughter from the other children stabbed at him like sharp glass. He wished he could melt into the ground, disappear before they noticed. But they always noticed. A boy with slick blonde hair pointed and smirked. Robot Boy. The word shot through Eli's chest. Another chimed in louder, calling him a broken toy. The tallest leaned down, voice dripping with mock pity. Even your dad is too ashamed to walk with you. Eli's throat closed tight, and his hands trembled on his knees. He tried to breathe, tried to fight back, but his body refused. His nails dug into his palms until it hurt, yet he stayed frozen, too afraid to move. Their laughter circled him like a pack of wolves, growing bolder with every second of his silence. Then came the cruelest cut, the one that sliced deeper than all the rest. Even your mum couldn't stand staying around you. Eli's vision blurred, his chest aching like it might collapse. He wanted to scream, but all that came out was a weak gasp, the sound of someone drowning in plain sight. The boys roared with laughter, feeding off his pain, certain no one would ever step in. For Eli, time slowed. The world became a blur of jeering faces and the pounding in his ears. Then a sharp voice cracked the air. "Stop it!" The bullies spun around. Aaliyah Brooks, small but fierce, stood planted in front of Eli. Her brown eyes blazed with a fire that made them hesitate. She said they were nothing but cowards, picking on someone who couldn't fight back. The leader scoffed and shoved forward, but Aaliyah did not flinch. Eli stared at her through tears, stunned. No one had ever stood for him before. For the first time, the weight of cruelty shifted, as if someone else had chosen to carry a piece of it with him. The Morgan mansion gleamed like a palace, marble floors shining under the chandelier. Yet inside, warmth was nowhere to be found. That morning, Eli sat stiffly at the long dining table, his shirt stained with a small splash of milk. Vivian's sharp voice cut through the silence. "Do you know how humiliating it is to have you limping around like this? You represent this family, and all you ever do is make us look weak." Eli froze, his fork shaking in his hand. Marcus entered, phone pressed to his ear, his voice steady as he spoke of deals and deadlines. He glanced at his son, and for the briefest second, his eyes lingered on the milk stain. There was a flicker, something almost like regret, before his gaze dropped back to his phone. He muttered, "He's fine, Viv," then turned away, pretending the look on Eli's face wasn't there. Vivian leaned closer, her perfume sharp, her words colder than the marble beneath their feet. "You should be grateful, Eli. Without me, you would be nothing but a broken burden." Eli swallowed hard, the sting of her words pressing down like a weight he couldn't shake. He wanted to answer, to defend himself, but his throat locked tight. The meal was rigid, measured portions lined up as if food were medicine. Vivian dictated what he ate, how much, and when he stopped. Dessert was locked behind her approval, and one wrong bite could spark another scolding. Marcus shifted in his chair, his conversation faltering for a second as he watched Eli push his food around. He clenched his jaw, as though something inside him twisted, but then forced his voice back into the call. Later, in his room, Eli sat among walls lined with expensive art and untouched toys. The room looked perfect for visitors, but hollow for a child. The bedspread was stiff, the shelves arranged like a showroom. He reached for a small wooden truck hidden beneath the bed, the only toy that felt truly his. Holding it close, he whispered to himself that maybe one day someone would see him as more than a disgrace. The sound of heels clicked outside the door. Vivian swept in without knocking, her eyes scanning the room like a warden checking a cell, her lips curled in a smile without warmth. "You'll never be more than a reminder of weakness if you keep acting this way," she said. She switched off the light and left him in the dark. Marcus passed by in the hallway at that very moment, hearing her tone. His steps faltered, his brow furrowed, as though something unsettled him. But he shook it off, convincing himself it was nothing, and walked away. Behind the door, Eli lay still, staring into the shadows. In a mansion worth millions, he felt smaller than ever, a boy trapped inside a golden cage, waiting for someone to notice. After school, Eli lingered by the side gate, his backpack pressed against his chest as if it could shield him. Aaliyah joined him, her voice soft and steady. She told him that he wasn't broken, that he was only trapped in a cage someone else had built. Eli wanted to believe her, but the ache in his leg never let him forget the words Vivian repeated every day. One afternoon, Aaliyah invited him home to the trailer park. The air smelled of cornbread from Miss Brooks's tiny kitchen, and Eli felt a comfort he had never known inside the marble halls of his mansion. Miss Brooks welcomed him with a smile and poured sweet tea into chipped glasses. "Make yourself at home, child," she said, and he almost believed he could. When Eli winced climbing the porch steps, Miss Brooks noticed. She crouched beside him, her eyes sharp with concern. "May I take a look, sweetheart?" she asked gently. Eli hesitated, terrified Vivian might find out, but Aaliyah urged him to trust. With trembling hands, he nodded. Miss Brooks carefully unbuckled the straps and studied the prosthetic. She ran her fingers along the padding, her brows knitting tighter with each second. She adjusted a strap, repositioned the lining, and said softly, "Try to take a step now." Eli stood uncertain, leaning on the railing, but then he placed one foot forward. His eyes widened. The sharp pain that usually cut through every movement was gone. He took another step, and his face shifted from confusion to wonder. For the first time, walking felt almost natural. Miss Brooks let out a breath, her voice thick with anger. "My God, this padding was placed wrong. Whoever set this up did it to cause pain, not to help you." Eli's lips trembled as tears spilled. He stammered that Vivian always told him pain meant he was improving, that hurting was proof he was getting stronger. Miss Brooks cupped his cheek with her weathered hand. "No, child. Pain means someone failed you." Her words struck him harder than the bullies ever had. The years of silent endurance broke open, and Eli sobbed, his small frame shaking as if releasing every moment he had swallowed back. Aaliyah sat beside him on the porch, holding his hand tightly. She whispered that he was strong, stronger than anyone who had tried to keep him down. Eli wanted so badly to believe her, and when he took another step without wincing, he felt, for the first time, that maybe she was right. Eli stood by the gate, talking softly with Aaliyah, his face brighter than it had been in weeks. For a moment, he forgot the weight on his shoulders. Then a black car pulled up, and the door slammed shut with a sound that made his stomach drop. Vivian strode across the pavement, her heels clicking like a warning. Her eyes narrowed when she saw Aaliyah. She hissed at Eli, her voice sharp enough to cut. "What did I tell you about mixing with trash like this? Do you think being seen with her makes you look stronger? It only proves how pitiful you are." Aaliyah stepped forward, her chin high. "At least I don't drag people into pain just to feel powerful." Vivian's face twisted with fury, and she grabbed Eli's arm so hard he winced. "Don't you dare talk back to me," she spat, but her glare was aimed at Aaliyah. Eli stumbled as she yanked him toward the car, fear making his breath short. Aaliyah shouted after him, "Eli, you're not what she says you are. Remember that." His eyes filled with tears, but he managed to look back at her. She slipped a tiny toy car into his hand, pressing it into his palm before Vivian pulled him away. Eli clenched it tight, holding on as if it was the only thing keeping him upright. Inside the car, Vivian's words rained down like stones. "You will never embarrass me like that again. That girl is dirt, and if you see her again, you'll regret it." Eli shrank into the seat, trembling, his fingers digging into the toy until his knuckles turned white. Yet beneath the fear, something stirred. He could still hear Aaliyah's voice ringing in his ears, telling him he was not what Vivian said. For the first time, a tiny spark of defiance flickered inside him. He whispered silently to himself, gripping the toy harder. "I am not what she says." Marcus had never slowed down enough to notice how his son walked. That afternoon, when Miss Brooks adjusted the straps and padding of the leg, Eli took a step across the worn carpet of her living room. For the first time in years, he moved without the sharp wince that usually twisted his face. Marcus stared, phone forgotten in his hand, as if he were seeing his son for the very first time. Eli lifted his head cautiously, waiting for the usual sting, but his steps were steadier, his shoulders less tense. Marcus blinked in disbelief. "Why does it look so different?" he asked quietly, more to himself than anyone. Miss Brooks sighed and shook her head, explaining that the leg had been assembled in a way that created constant pain. It was not a mistake, it was deliberate. Later, in Dr. Patel's office, the truth hit harder. The doctor showed medical reports, pointing out sedatives found in Eli's system. He said no child should be given these drugs unless under close medical care. Eli sat small in the chair, his hands shaking. He whispered that Vivian always told him the pills were vitamins, that the pain meant he was improving. The words broke Marcus's composure. He turned to his son, eyes wide, anger and guilt clashing in his chest. Eli finally let it out, sobbing that she lied every single day, that she wanted him weak so he would never fight back. His voice cracked as he cried that he thought maybe he deserved the pain, because she made him believe it was his fault. Marcus dropped to one knee, his hands trembling as he reached for his boy's shoulders. For once, the mask of the billionaire was gone. He told Eli to look at him, that none of this was his fault. Eli's tears spilled faster, his small body shaking as if releasing years of silence. Miss Brooks watched quietly, her eyes wet, while Dr. Patel confirmed again that what had been done to Eli was not an accident. Marcus rose slowly, his jaw tight. He muttered that Vivian had done this, that she had controlled everything under his roof while he looked away. The shame was heavy, but beneath it, fury began to burn. Eli wiped his eyes with the back of his hand and whispered that he did not want to go back home with her. For the first time, Marcus did not dismiss him. He pulled his son close and said they would not let her hurt him anymore. Eli clung to his father's shirt, feeling something he had long stopped hoping for. He felt believed. The courtroom was heavy with silence, every breath tense. Vivian sat tall at her table, her polished smile aimed at the judge, her voice dripping with confidence. She painted herself as the savior, claiming Marcus was too consumed by money to care for his son. She said she alone had kept Eli disciplined and safe. Marcus's jaw clenched, but he stayed quiet, waiting. Then Dr. Patel took the stand, calm and precise. He presented the medical records that showed Eli's prosthetic had been assembled incorrectly, deliberately creating pain. He pointed out the sedatives in Eli's blood work, shaking his head as he explained that no caring guardian would approve such treatment. Vivian's smile cracked, and her voice rose in protest, but the judge silenced her with a firm hand. Miss Brooks stepped forward next, her presence steady and unshaken. She told the court about the day she adjusted Eli's straps, about the way he walked, freer than ever before. She described the boy's face, a mix of shock and relief, realizing someone had deceived him. Her voice faltered only once, when she said, "No child should be taught that pain is normal." Vivian muttered with disdain that Miss Brooks was nothing but a retired nurse from a trailer park, but the judge's frown silenced her again. The judge then asked if Eli wished to speak. The room froze. Eli rose slowly, his small frame trembling. At first his voice wavered, but then it grew stronger. He told them that for years he believed he was broken. He thought every painful step proved he was less than the other kids. Tears filled his eyes as he declared that he was never broken, only lied to. The words struck deeper than any document. The courtroom hushed, many eyes glistening. Vivian slammed her palm against the table and snapped that Eli had been manipulated. Marcus's composure shattered, his voice thundering across the chamber. "You don't get to call this manipulation. You poisoned him with lies. You made him believe pain was his destiny." The two locked eyes, a silent war between them. Vivian spat that Marcus had abandoned his role as a father. Marcus shot back that control was not love, and that she had stolen Eli's dignity for her own pride. Years of silence cracked open in that moment, his fury finally unleashed. The judge's gavel came down hard. Custody remained with Marcus. Vivian was stripped of any authority over Eli's medical care. The verdict rang through the courtroom, final and sharp. As people began to leave, Vivian gathered her papers, her face tight with rage. She rose gracefully, but her eyes burned. Passing Marcus near the aisle, she leaned just enough for him to hear her whisper, "This isn't over. You'll see what it costs to cross me." Her heels clicked coldly against the floor as she walked out, leaving a chill in her wake. Eli clung to his father's arm, his small hand gripping tight. For the first time, he felt steady ground beneath him. Marcus placed his hand protectively on his son's shoulder. The storm wasn't over, but Eli was no longer alone. The first time Eli strapped on the new prosthetic, he looked down at it with wide eyes. It felt lighter, smoother, almost like an extension of himself rather than a punishment. When he took a cautious step, there was no stab of pain, only a strange freedom. His lips curled into a small smile, the kind that had been missing for years. Aaliyah clapped beside him, her laughter filling the air, and for once he let himself laugh too. Days later, the school hosted a fun run. Eli stood at the starting line with Aaliyah, his hands clammy, but his spirit restless with hope. The bullies whispered nearby, smirking that he would trip before the first corner. He swallowed hard, but when the whistle blew, he pushed forward. His legs moved faster than he thought possible, the air rushing past him like he was finally catching up to life. Halfway through, his foot caught uneven ground, and he tumbled to the dirt. The laughter from the sidelines cut deep, sharp, and cruel. For a heartbeat, he thought of staying down, of letting their words prove true. But then he saw Aaliyah slow beside him, her hand reaching out, not to pull him up, but to remind him he was not alone. He pressed his palms into the ground and rose, dust streaking his face but fire in his eyes. The crowd grew quieter as he ran again, his stride unsteady but determined. Step after step, his breath ragged, his chest burning, yet he refused to stop. By the final stretch, Aaliyah ran at his side, their shoulders brushing, and together they crossed the finish line. No medal hung around his neck, but the silence of the bullies was its own victory. Marcus watched from the crowd, his throat tight, tears he would not let fall burning in his eyes. Eli stood tall, sweat on his forehead, dust on his knees, and the smallest grin on his lips. He had fallen, but he had risen. For the first time, he believed he was more than his scars. He was strong. Marcus drove through streets he had never bothered to notice before, past cracked sidewalks and rusted mailboxes, until he reached the trailer park. It looked nothing like the glass towers and polished floors of his world, yet the moment he stepped out of his car, he felt something raw and true. Miss Brooks opened the door, her face lined with years of struggle, but softened with kindness. Aaliyah stood beside her, protective and proud. Marcus removed his glasses and spoke with a voice stripped of pride. He said, "Thank you for giving my son what I never could. Thank you for showing him courage when I gave him silence." Miss Brooks shook her head gently, telling him that love does not come from wealth. It comes from being present. Aaliyah added that Eli never needed perfection. He only needed someone to believe in him. Inside the small trailer, Eli laughed with a joy Marcus had not heard in years. He sat cross-legged on the floor with Aaliyah, playing with toy cars as if they were treasures. Marcus felt a pang in his chest, realizing money had built walls around his boy, while this place had given him freedom. He lowered himself onto the worn couch and whispered that he was sorry. He promised he would not fail Eli again. The next weekend, they gathered at the park. The sun spilled across the grass, warm and golden. Eli stood at the edge of the field, his new prosthetic steady, his hand clasped tightly in Aaliyah's. Marcus watched from a bench, his heart swelling as his son began to run. Each step was uneven but full of determination. Each laugh that slipped from Eli's lips was like music. Aaliyah ran beside him, their hands never breaking apart. The bullies were nowhere in sight, and for once, Eli did not care. He was free, the wind brushing his face, the light dancing on his skin. He shouted with joy, a sound that carried through the park, turning every head and silencing every doubt. Marcus pressed his hands together, whispering to himself that this was what mattered. Not the contracts, not the image, not the empire. Just this moment, where his son was whole in ways no fortune could buy. Miss Brooks wiped her eyes, smiling as if she had always known this day would come. As the camera of memory lingers, Eli runs forward, Aaliyah's laughter at his side, sunlight wrapping them both, and a voice rises, gentle and certain. True strength is not found in money or in flawless appearances. It is found in the people who stand with us when the world tries to break us. From the moment Aaliyah stood before Eli on that cruel playground to the day he ran free with her by his side, his life was transformed. What began in pain and silence became a journey of courage, friendship, and the healing power of love. This story reminds us that family is not only about blood, but about those who choose to stand with us when the world tries to break us. If this story touched you, share your feelings in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe to Emotional Echoes so more hearts can be reached. Thanks for listening.